there, my name is Carmen and I'm basically just someone who loves to sew her own clothes and loves to show you how to do it too. Today's DIY is a very cozy one. I got this thrifted sweater dress a couple months ago because I absolutely loved the fabric. I pretty much love any fabric that is soft and cozy, so this definitely fit the bill. And I really wanted to make something with this dress that I could lounge around in at home while looking cute and being comfy and cozy. So that is what we are doing today, transforming this thrifted sweater dress into, hopefully, something amazing. Alright guys, so I'm here, I have my Pinterest open and I'm just gonna look for some inspiration here for this project. So let's see. Yes, so this board here is my comfy style board where this is pretty much where I go every time I'm planning on making something comfy that I want some inspiration for. So we're gonna look at that one. Here we go. So I'm seeing a lot of two-piece sets, and I think that is the route I want to go with this dress because I think there's enough fabric to make a pair of shorts and a top. So I think this kind of thing with a cropped tank top and some loose-fitting shorts would be a good way to go with this dress because I think we can keep the top pretty simple because it's already a tank top type of design. So I think what I'll do is just cut off the cowl neck on the dress and then turn the top part just into a cropped tank top. I'm not sure if I'll leave the straps kind of as is on the dress like a regular tank top, or if I'll cut it like this and make it a spaghetti strap type situation. We'll figure that out a little bit later. And then for the shorts, I think I'll just, try to make something simple and flowy like this from the bottom part of the dress. Alright guys, so I got the cowl neck cut off of the dress and now I've got it on my dress form because I needed to mark where I wanted the hem of the crop top to be. So you can probably see here there is a marking. This is where I wanted my hem to be for my crop top. This is actually 1 inch below where I wanted my hem to be. I want my hem to be right in here. And so I marked about 1 inch below that because I need to add extra for seam allowance. So I'm gonna add 1 inch for seam allowance. And then I'm going to just mark and cut this after I take it off the dress form so that I can use a ruler and be sure that I cut everything straight. Now for the neckline, that's the other thing I wanted to look at on the dress form. I think instead of doing a spaghetti strap situation like in the inspiration photo, I think what I'm going to do is just make this neckline a little bit wider. So I think I'm going to cut off about 1 inch all the way around the neckline. And also I'm going to probably use the leftover material from the cowl neck to finish the neckline. So it'll be kind of like a binding. So first up, I need to cut off the top part of the dress to make my top. So I got out my ruler and using that mark I had drawn while it was on the dress form as a guide, I drew a straight line across the front of the dress and then cut along that line with my rotary cutter. I then set aside the bottom part of the dress for later because I'm going to be using that to make the shorts, and we're going to finish the top first. Next, I used my ruler to make markings 1 inch in all the way around the neckline, and then I cut along those markings with my scissors to cut 1 inch off of the neckline. Next up, I cut the binding for my neckline. So to do that, I cut 1 inch off that top finished edge of the cowl neck that I had cut off the dress earlier. Alright y'all, I'm back with a band-aid on my finger. If you were paying attention during the last clip, you may have seen me nick my finger with my rotary cutter. So I'm back with a band-aid and let's get back to what we were doing. So when I lined up the binding along the neckline edge, I realized that the binding was actually longer than the neckline, which is not what we want. The binding needs to actually be shorter than the neckline for everything to lay flat. So I cut a couple of inches out of the binding and then sewed it back together with a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine. Now with my binding ready to go into the neckline, I quartered both the binding and the neckline edge with pins by putting in 4 equally spaced pins both into the binding and into the neckline. This is going to help us make sure that the stretch of the binding is distributed evenly around the neckline. Then I can line up each of the pins on the binding with the corresponding pin on the neckline and pin it in place at each of those 4 points. Just make sure that you're lining up the raw edge of the binding with the raw edge of the neckline, because we want that finished edge of the binding to be the top of the binding when it's folded out. I then took it to my serger and I sewed the binding to the neckline, stretching the binding in between the pins just enough so that it fit the neckline. Once the binding is attached, all I had to do was flip the binding up away from the neckline and give it a good pressing with my iron, pressing the seam allowances down away from the binding. Then all that's left to do is hem the top, and the top is done. So to hem the top, I just folded up my 1-inch hem all the way around the bottom edge of the top, pinned it in place, and took it to my sewing machine and top stitched it in place. So I got the shirt on and it's a little bit too big. I probably should have thought about this before. I don't know why I didn't feel like it looked that big when it was on the dress form, and now it really does. So I think what I'm gonna do is turn it inside out, try it on inside out, and then I will take 1 inch or 2 out of each of the side seams to make it a little bit more fitted. I don't really want it to be fitted, but I also don't want it to be quite this loose. Alright, so I got the shirt back off and I kind of evened out my pins after taking it off and made sure it was even on both sides. So now I'm just going to sew down each of the side seams right here along where I pinned, just to make it a tad more fitted. Alright, so I've got the side seams sewn a little bit smaller, and now I'm going to try this on and make sure that it fits before I cut away this extra fabric at the side seams here. Alrighty, so here's what we've got now. I tried it on a second ago and I liked the fit of it a lot better, so I cut away the extra fabric that was here where I had sewn my new side seams. So I'm liking how this looks. I think it looks a lot better. It's really comfy, and I think it's gonna go good with our pair of loose shorts. So I'm gonna continue wearing this while I make the shorts, and let's get started on the shorts. So for the shorts, I got out my loose-fitting elasticated waist pants pattern, and I thought that I would make a shorts version of it. But when I tried to lay it out on the fabric that I had left from the bottom of the dress, I quickly realized it was not going to work because I did not have enough fabric to cut loose-fitting shorts. So I went with Plan B, which was to make leggings shorts, and I actually had the Jaylee Clara leggings pattern in my pattern collection. So I pulled those out and I decided I would make the shorts version of that pattern out of my fabric. So I actually already have a detailed blog post on how to sew up this pattern, so I will link that down in the description below if you want more detailed instructions on how I put together these shorts. But basically, I made them as stated in the pattern instructions, other than I cut with a little bit extra at the top because I was hoping I would be able to just fold down the top instead of adding that wide waistband on the leggings. And I also added a center front seam instead of cutting the center front on the fold, because the pattern actually has no center front seam because the front is cut on the fold, but I added in the seam because it just worked better for the fabric that I had. So I cut out the 2 leg pieces and the gusset piece and put the shorts together. I also made sure that when I cut the leg pieces that I cut them with the bottom edge of the shorts along that finished edge along the bottom of the skirt so that it would already be finished and I wouldn't even have to hem it. Alright guys, so I have the shorts pretty much sewn up other than the waist, and I was hoping they would be high-waisted enough that I could just fold the top over and put in some elastic, but that is not the case. You can see how low rise they are. So the shorts don't include this top part. But I came up with the solution here. So this part here is what we have left over from the cowl neck, and it fits like perfectly as a waistband. So I think what I'm gonna do is sew this onto the top of the shorts as my waistband, and then it brings them to the perfect high-waisted height as well. And then because this top edge is raw, since we cut off the top part of the cowl neck earlier to use as the neckline at the top, I think what I'll do is put in a little bit of 1/4 inch elastic right here along the top edge, and then fold the top down around the elastic like so, and then top stitch it. So next I attached our new waistband to the top of the shorts, and I did this exactly the same way that I attached the neckline binding to the neckline. I quartered the waistband with pins, and then I also quartered the top edge of the shorts with pins. Then I matched up the pins and pinned it in place along the top edge of the shorts at those 4 points where the pins matched up. Then, because this was a larger area to go around than the neckline, I also added in some extra pins in between just to make sure that I would have everything where I wanted it when I sewed it in place. Then I took this to my serger and I sewed the waistband to the top of the shorts. With the waistband attached, now it's time for elastic. So I cut a piece of elastic that was just slightly shorter than the top edge of the waistband, and I overlapped the ends of the elastic and sewed it in place with a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine to form a loop. Next, I did the same thing with the elastic that I did with my neckline binding and my waistband. I quartered the elastic with 4 evenly spaced pins. I also quartered the top edge of the shorts waistband with 4 evenly spaced pins. Then I pinned the elastic to the inside of the top edge of the waistband, matching up those 4 evenly spaced pins and pinning it at those 4 points. Then I took it to my serger and I just serged right along that top edge of my waistband, serging the elastic in place. So the elastic is kind of encased in the serging stitches. I also stretched the elastic just enough to fit the waistband between the pins, just to make sure that the stretch was evenly spaced around the waistband. Now with the elastic sewn into the top edge of the waistband, we are down to the very last step, and that is to take it to the sewing machine and fold the elastic down towards the inside of the shorts to cover the elastic, basically. So you're basically hemming the top edge of the shorts, folding it right along that 1/4 inch wide elastic, and then stitching or top stitching with your sewing machine using a zigzag stitch to secure everything in place. Well, that is it. I hope that you enjoy this little montage of clips of the finished set, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another sewing tutorial.